in your head. It's just human nature to use it all over the internet.
Or write it down on a sticky note.
Write it down on a sticky note, yes, that's another thing.
But put it under the keyboard because then it's MFA.
Well, extra secure, yeah. All right, so let's say that you aren't using a common password and you aren't using your password all over the internet. It doesn't matter if a phishing link makes it through your spam filter and you hand over your credentials. So the page up there, that was an actual phishing email. You can see that the URL definitely isn't from 365, but the sign-in page looks just like it, and if you aren't paying extra close attention, you'll just hand over your credentials.
And we see this a lot.
We do see this a lot, and one of the things that you guys as administrators can do is customize the 365 sign-in page with your logos and custom backgrounds and things like that, just so if somebody receives a page like this, it maybe triggers something to have them not sign into it. All right, so passwords don't work, but they do work when they're paired with MFA. Your password doesn't secure your account. Your MFA secures your account. And in 2020, Microsoft looked at all of their compromised user accounts, and they found out that 99.9% of them didn't have any form of MFA on them.
So you're saying MFA is a good thing?
Yes, any kind of MFA is better than just a naked password account.
So we shouldn't turn it off?
So what we should do is require MFA for everybody. There's so many times that we have conversations with companies and they're like, we have MFA across the board, and then we go in and we look at the policies and we see there's like 10 people excluded. And those 10 people, we ask who they are, and it's always the owner, the CFO, the CEO, the owner's wife, and some senior management. So these are the people that have their contact info and their names and everything plastered all over the website, and they're posting to LinkedIn and advertising for the site, for the company themselves. And they also have access to all of the trade secrets, the bank accounts. You know, they're the biggest targets, and we also allow them to be the most vulnerable to compromise.
So like the CEOs, CFOs, I mean, hopefully Tom's watching this and get a little brownie point. So, Tom's very technical, but we all know some of these people in other companies are not, and we're now making the people who are most likely to get attacked the least IT tech savvy open for more vulnerability.
Right, yeah, and if your CEO or your owner is still using a BlackBerry, it might be time to have them upgrade to something a little more modern.
Get them a Windows Phone.
Yeah. All right, so Microsoft makes it easy to throw MFA across the board, and if you have Azure AD P1, you can use conditional access. With conditional access, you can get granular with your settings. So you can, if you don't want MFA prompts to come from inside your LAN, you can set a location exclusion. So you can make exclusions based on location, but don't make exclusions based on users themselves.
So one thing I would add to that, though, is if available, if they have a guest network, have that go out a different IP then, so that people can't just go into the parking lot and get through it.
Well, right, yeah. You want to, if you're going to do that, you're going to want to make sure that your network is secure and only employees are on it. All right, so make your MFA policy apply to all users and all apps. That's ideal. That way you don't ever have to worry about forgetting to turn on MFA for a user when a new user starts. And also legacy apps and protocols like IMAP and POP, they don't use modern authentication, so they can right now bypass MFA, but thank God Microsoft is turning the basic authentication off next month, so we won't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, we'll ask you, hey, are you using, POP or IMAP? And we'll turn it, we'll run a PowerShell that turns it off default and actually make it so that the people that are already up there basically can't use POP or IMAP. There's no need for them to. I mean, I'm not a fan of either one of those. Obviously, there's some legacy applications that have to have them, which, okay, we know that that needs to happen. But like Barry said, basic auth is going away, so a lot of those applications are not going to work. So,
Yeah, and you may need to have your software vendors update their stuff so that they no longer use any of those basic authentication protocols. All right, so if you don't have Azure AD P1 and you want to turn MFA on across the board, you can use security defaults. So all tenants that were created after 2019 have security defaults enabled by default. Any tenant older than that, you have to manually go in there and turn it on. Or if you've went in and turned it off yourself, you can easily flip it on by logging into Azure, going out to properties and enable the security defaults.
we would never want to just turn that off, would we?
No, we don't want to, but it happens. All right, so
Only in cases where we need to turn on conditional access, though.
yes, yeah,
I mean, not just to turn it off, you know, because the CEO doesn't want to do MFA, right?
right, yep.
Okay, yep, okay.
Yeah, and so security defaults, they turn on MFA for everyone. They block basic authentication protocols, and they also cover all of Microsoft's best practices for tenant security. And Microsoft claims that a tenant that has security defaults enabled is 80% less likely to be compromised than a tenant with security defaults off. All right, so passwords alone, bad. The MFA in the middle, those are more secure, but it still goes where you have to type in your username, type in your password, and then respond to the MFA prompt. And where we want to get you to is a passwordless sign-on. With the Authenticator app and Windows Hello is the combination that we like. So passwordless combines the convenience of passwords alone and the security of MFA. So the main complaint that we get with MFA is it's too slow, text messages don't show up, the one-time passcodes flip too fast. It's just too much of a hassle. So with passwordless, we can eliminate those second factor prompts with passwordless.
And with the multi-factor app, most of the time, the younger generation to, you know, I'm going to say younger than me, never really have a problem with putting it on their phone. That's where they live. All their bank apps are on it. Everything else is on it. They don't care. It's the 60-year-old Rosemary that's been there for 30 years that has an old flip phone that isn't even a smartphone that you now have that issue with. And that's where, you know, you can start doing the conditional access where, okay, Mary, if you're at your desk, we're not going to make you MFA. But outside the network, you're going to have to. So you're going to have to set up some type. We need to work with you on doing that. So most of the time, yeah, there's always going to be those problem childs. Always. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, and if you want to start going down the passwordless road, first we need to enable the authentication methods. And like I said, we prefer the Microsoft Authenticator app. It's easy, it's secure, it's convenient. Everybody generally has a phone on them. But for, would you call her 60-year-old Maribel?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm getting old myself, so I don't remember.
For those users that refuse to use a phone or they don't have a compatible phone, we can also set up FIDO2 keys for them to go passwordless. It's a little bit more of a hassle. You have to carry this around with you instead of a phone. But it works, and you can scope those out by group. It doesn't have to be the same across the board. So if you have certain people using FIDO keys, you just throw those people into the group. And
The bad thing about the FIDO key is what's going to happen is they're going to just leave it in their desktop or laptop, and it's just going to sit there. And now your MFA is just right there, you know. So the app piece of it, we really, you know about that. Awesome. Just really want to try and get the app. It's better. It's easier, I would say, and especially the passwordless. I mean, if people get phished and you're dealing with a passwordless login, when you enter in that number, so you log in, all I do is I put in my email address. Hit enter. I don't put in a password or anything else. Comes up with the number 58, and I go to my phone, I put in 58, I use my thumbprint, and I'm in. There's no password that I put in. So if I'm on a phished website, and we've done this internally where they see my username, but the password is blank to them. They don't see it at all. That's what's nice, because even if you get phished, which eventually somebody will, I mean, they're getting better and better all the time.
Yeah, spam filters aren't perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to get that point where, okay, fine, let's just do passwordless and not have them worry about that. Let's do the Windows Hello for the PCs. Let's get them to the point where they don't have to try and remember a password, even though people remember their password all the time. Nobody ever has to have it reset, right?
Right,
Yeah.
yep. All right, so when you turn on these authentication methods in Azure, that opens it up so that your 365 can be passwordless. So that takes out that chunk of the puzzle. But you also have all the other applications and programs that you use on a daily basis. And we want to tie those in to use Azure for the IDP using SAML. And most business and enterprise class software, they have pre-configured enterprise applications available. If you look in the Azure AD gallery for enterprise applications, there's literally thousands of them. So go find the software that you're using, find the directions from the company, and at that point it's really just a copy and paste from settings on-prem to up in Azure and vice versa.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll even have an XML file that you pull down that you import on the other side, and it puts in all the information for you. So they're making it easier and easier every time.
Yeah, so that will, when you tie those into Azure with SAML, that makes it so you can use passwordless authentication. It also allows you to tie in these applications to your conditional access. So if you want to limit logins from US locations only, you can set up those same rules on these applications now.
Yeah, everything at High Point that we use, you know, our BombGuard to help remote you, our ConnectWise, which is our CRM, Mimecast, pretty much anything that we have, I shouldn't say pretty much, everything that we have is MFA. It's tied to our Microsoft MFA in one way or another. We've got our switches internally tied to MFA. Everything is tied to MFA. So we know that we're a little bit more secure. Obviously, we need to get Jess a little more updated, maybe get her a different, you know, something extra beyond that.
Right. So this is just a list of pre-configured enterprise applications that we've configured in the last few months that I could think of off the top of my head. And most VPN clients are out there. SonicWall is one that is not, but Palo Alto and FortiGate right now we do a lot of. And also Mimecast and Know Before, we've been doing a lot of those lately as well.
Yes, the SonicWall used to be Aventail. I don't know what it's called now, but the VPN, you know, box that's for them, it supports some of the SAML stuff, so you can do some of those with the SonicWall. But the SonicWall itself does not have it built in. You almost have to do like a radius server and go through that.
All right, so then we have the 365 and your applications tied into Azure. You can passwordless with those. But it doesn't really do any good if you have to sign into your laptop or desktop 10 times a day. So at that point, we want to enable Windows Hello for Business. If your machines are Azure joined, you don't need to do anything when you sign into them the first time. It's going to make you register with Windows Hello. If they're joined to a local domain, we need to flip on a group policy to allow Windows Hello for Business.
And one thing we hear a lot with that is, okay, you can log in with a PIN now. How is that more secure than my 24-character random generated password? Well, that PIN is just for that PC locally that needs to be right next to you, that probably is, you know, hopefully different than your phone, but just like your phone. I mean, you're putting in a PIN to get in, you're using your face, you know, whatever. We're trying to make it easier for, again, that user to not have to put in the password. And the less and less you require or put a dependency on passwords, the longer you can put for them to have to reset it. There's some instances where, with some of the password lists, if you get that set up correctly and they don't know their password, you could set it to never expire because they don't know it. They don't use it.
So Windows Hello, it's kind of a pseudo desktop MFA. Microsoft considers it MFA, but insurance companies don't. So if you have a requirement for desktop MFA, you'll have to look at a third party. And like Watson said, the Windows Hello is, when you enroll, it's tied to that computer's hardware. It's stored in the TPM chip. It doesn't travel. Nothing is transmitted. Your PIN and face and fingerprint aren't transmitted to a domain controller or anything like that. All lives on the hardware. So each user should have their own PC. And because of the hardware requirements for it, the computers also need to be relatively new. Anything that comes with Windows 11 is gonna make it. And basically anything that was built in the last 6 years should have the right hardware for it. PIN is one of the default options for Windows Hello, but we only want to use that as a fallback because it is easy to just shoulder surf, and I could steal Watson's 6-character PIN.
I type it pretty fast.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So use it as a fallback. Use face unlock or fingerprint, and if your computer has the right hardware but there's no biometric on there, you can use a FIDO2 key with biometrics on there in place of onboard biometrics.
So like a PIN for a fallback, so like in case, let's say on Tuesday, somebody gets a haircut, comes back to the office and has to re-enroll because it doesn't recognize you, or, that person.
I don't know who you're talking about.
I don't know.
That is a
yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. There is a limit of 10 Windows Hello enrollments per device. So occasionally, if you cycle through a lot of people, you'll have to go and reset the TPM so that you can enroll new users. And there is a multi-factor unlock, which would make Windows Hello a true desktop MFA.
Oh, I'm sure that works perfect.
Yeah, it's in preview. And it requires an internet connection, and it brings up a web sign-in, and it's pretty hokey. So it's definitely in preview right now. Hopefully they will make that better and make it work offline.
I was going to say, because, Tom's on a plane, that probably wouldn't make him very happy.
Yeah. All right, so after you guys get everything done on the back end, then the users actually need to use it in order for it to make sense. In passwordless, we can't force it on the users. In the Authenticator app, you have to enable phone sign-in. And then once you do that, the phone sends a little hardware ID to Azure, and it registers under the user account, and it's tied to the user. And when that happens, a little switch gets flipped so that the next time the user will sign into 365 or a SAML-connected app, instead of typing in their password, they're going to type in their username. They're going to be presented with a number. They'll type the number into the Authenticator app, and then it will ask for their fingerprint to verify that it's them. So no password is required at that point.
Yeah. We did this at High Point, and we didn't push it out for everyone. We just kind of did a little bit of word of mouth. I think a couple of us did it. Was talking about it somewhere, and I think Justin's seen it, and Justin's like, I want that. You already got it. Just click this button. So word of mouth had spread, and basically that's where a lot of people were just setting this up. So
yeah, when people see other people using it and how easy it is, they really will. It will really start to spread with word of mouth at that point. And there's also, if you really wanted to, Microsoft's got some campaigns. You can hand out flyers and spam emails on it and stuff like that. All right, so to build on top of the passwordless stuff, Microsoft just took the temporary access pass out of preview, and it's a time-limited password. So when you enroll your phone in passwordless, you can only have one phone connected to your account. The hardware is fingerprinted, it's tied to you. That's part of your identification with passwordless. So when you get a new phone every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, you need a way to enroll that phone. But if you don't know what your password is and you don't want to give the user their actual password, you can use a temporary access pass. And it's basically a 6 to 12 character password that's good for anywhere from 1 hour to 8 hours, and you can set it to self-destruct after one use if you want. And when you enable that for a user, the next time that they log in, instead of bringing up a number prompt or password, it'll say enter the temporary access pass. And if it's a one-time use, once they sign in, that password gets deleted. It can never be used again. If it's set it up for multi-use, when the timer expires on it, it's deleted and it can never be used again. And then you can use that to set up your new phone with passwordless.
So basically, you're saying that when we set up a new user, that we can say, all their applications are tied into Azure. They don't have to put in a password because Windows Hello is going to come into place. So when we create that user, we can create a 256 long password and put it in as theirs, maybe set it never to expire or whatever your regulations are, and then basically say, well, put that in Excel spreadsheet. So you have that, right, on the file server?
Unencrypted? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Kidding. Please don't do that. It's a copy paste in. You don't need to know what it is. They don't need to know what it is, and you're done. So, it's a way that going forward is a very secure way for people that have, hey, I need to get into a PC and I need to get into O365, and maybe there's an app that we use that's tied to O365. That's it. Here you go. You don't need a password.
Yeah, and where that actually works really well is if your machines are joined to Azure. At that point, you can set up Windows Autopilot for Azure AD join using a temporary access pass. You can set it to be reused multiple times, and they can get everything configured up that way without ever knowing their password. If you're on a local domain, you can't set up Windows Hello without typing in your password one time. So if you're going to give them a 256 character password, they will have to type that in one time. And then after that, everything should be able to be done
Put it on a
passwordless.
sticky note, right?
Yeah. So I'm hoping that they somehow get this working right for on-prem autopilot or hybrid Azure AD autopilot deployments, so that we never need to use a password, but right now we have to type it in one time.
And some of that, the Azure AD autopilot, with everyone working, a lot of people working remote, even at High Point, we have some people that never come into the office. We put their machine just Azure only joined. How well does, the computer write back from Azure to local?
Well, it works fine, but we're syncing the usernames up from AD, so all of the file server permissions and all that stuff work seamlessly for the people that have their machines Azure joined. All right. Then the application proxy, it's somewhat related to passwordless, but I just want to bring it up again because I think it's so cool. So the application proxy allows you to publish any web-based application that you have on-prem up into Azure without needing to poke holes in your firewall. So if you have people that VPN in to access your accounting software and it's web-based, you could publish that up into Azure and protect it with the Azure MFA, passwordless, and eliminate their VPN access. So when you do that, you have to install a little 6 meg program on one of your on-prem servers, and then you create an application proxy app. And that app then gets published into the app waffle or into the My Apps alongside all of the other apps. We internally have our published RDS apps available in Azure, so that when I'm working from home, if I need to use RDS, I log into Azure instead of going through the VPN. It's pretty slick. Another thing about this is if you're working with a third-party vendor or somebody outside that VPNs in. When they VPN in, they're going to have access to your whole, whatever subnet you give them to. But with this, you could set them up with a guest account in Azure, publish the app through the app proxy, and then assign permissions so they would log into Azure to get access to that, and you can eliminate their VPN access. Pretty cool stuff. All
And
right.
you don't have to create them a highpointnetworks.com account. We can set them up as a guest with their work account.
As a guest account or a B2B guest account if they are already working for somebody that has 365. So, want to make sure that we're using MFA. Take advantage of conditional access and security defaults so that when you're setting up new users, you don't have to remember to go into the MFA portal to turn it on. If you want to step it up from MFA to passwordless, start small. Start with 365, try it out there. See which one of your applications and programs can be tied into Azure with SAML, and encourage Windows Hello usage. And hopefully at that point, people are inconvenienced by having to type in a password and not used to it. So, do we have any questions?
Chip, any remote?
Not yet.
Okay. Inside?
So what kind of licensing do you need to have your stuff published to Azure? Is that included with Office 365?
With the application proxy, it works best if you have Azure AD P1 because then you can assign group permissions to it. If you don't have that, it still works, but you have to assign everybody individually.
And there's a limit to how many each person can have access to.
Right. Yep.
What licensing do you need for like the application proxy or tying in any of the other enterprise apps? So by default, it's there. By non-default or making sure that you're, have enough, let's say you got 10 applications, you may be under the wire where, they all don't need it, but you may go over that and now you're out of licensing and stuff like that. For the 300 under companies, we recommend business premium. Not that it's expensive and the account guys make $1 million off you every day with it. It's that it has the best bang for the buck. It really does. You got your Intune, you got your Autopilot, you've got your Azure AD P1s, all that stuff.
Can you have on-prem AD and Azure AD same? Can they do the same?
Yeah. So in that scenario, it's a hybrid environment. So we would use Azure AD Connect to sync your Active Directory up to Azure, and then those accounts stay in sync.
So the ones off-prem get the login screen custom fit.
Yep.
And then there you can also push out some of the applications that we were talking about in your MFA or stuff like that. You want to then have access to it, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Where it starts getting a little tricky is if your email still lives on on-prem Exchange. Then there's a little bit limited on what we can do for securing Exchange on-prem with MFA. But if your mail lives in the cloud and your users live in Active Directory, everything is good in that scenario.
Yeah, if you have an on-prem Exchange server, you want to tie into Azure. Best practice, or what we will always do, is we'll say, okay, we need AAD Connect, and we're going to turn your Exchange server into a hybrid server so that in the cloud, it knows that you have a mailbox on-prem. Because AAD Connect sometimes will tell it, and it's Microsoft. Sometimes it won't. And now you end up with a mailbox in O365 and a mailbox on-prem, and it kind of gets confusing.
You talked about locations. I did see some of that in some of the 365 accounts, so it's a small one right now. But I noticed some of the logins from some of the user
in conditional access, you can actually create a policy that says anything from outside of, there we go, outside of the United States, you're not allowing them to log in. Please make sure you tell your people that, because you get Tom and Justin in Mexico a little upset that they can't log in, because we need to put an exclusion in for those people that go out.
I think my supervisor was in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So I remember that's the function that setting that turned on.
Yeah.
And after that,
So we have a group created, allowed out of country. At that point, we just add them to that group. They're now allowed out of country. We probably could go a little bit more granular and actually create another access policy for just that person and just that country. Again, it's, kind of how granular do you want to get with those?
Yeah, most people aren't gone for more than a week, so we'll take our chances during that week.
Yep. And some people you have working outside of the country, Middle East, I know we have some people that have people that work in the Middle East. So we have to make an exemption for them to work from the Middle East or their country over there, but nowhere else, including America, because they never come over here, so why would we want them to log in over here?
Yeah, and that's a nice thing about conditional access, is you can really get as granular as you need to. You can make a blanket policy, or you can get as granular as possible.
and you said, what is the tool called that connects the hub?
Oh, that was the enterprise apps. Yeah, the pre-configured enterprise apps. Yeah, these are the ones where, if you're using FortiGate VPN on-prem, then you can hook up the enterprise app for FortiGate, and then you copy and paste the URLs from the actual firewall appliance into Azure, and it redirects authentication up into Azure, and then it comes back down to approve it. Well, the dedicated Sonic Wall VPN appliance does.
Aventail, it used to be called. I think it's SMA.
Yeah.
That you can tie in it supports SAML or OAuth, but just your default Sonic Wall, that's just your firewall that you actually use as a VPN as well.
NSAs or TZs
Yeah.
or anything like that.
They support Radius, so you can actually put a NPS server inside and tie that up, and that does require some additional licensing. Awesome. Well,
Chip,
thank
nothing
you.
from you? All right.
Good. We didn't want to make you work too hard.
Did you
Actually,
get
I had to get
your
up from
full-
behind the desk.
Did you get your full nap in today, Chip?
In the hybrid exchange environments, if you're on hybrid exchange, you migrate everything to Azure. A while back, Microsoft still required that you had on-prem. You couldn't get rid of the exchange. Is that still the scenario, or can we remove the on-prem?
That's still the scenario. To stay supported, we need to keep the hybrid on-prem.
Yep. We have a lot of people that are just shutting them off, and they're going to have some problems when they turn them back on. We kind of figured out they were supposed to do some type of addition to the AAD Connect to kind of pull all that together to get rid of that hybrid server, because they weren't allowing 2019s to have the free use license for it. We kind of figured that kind of died, because now you can actually get a 2019 Exchange server license as a hybrid now, so
Yeah.
They're
Microsoft moved the
big-
goalposts a little bit on that
kicking
one.
the can down the road, trying to figure out what to do. And of course, they're going to tell you, put everything in the cloud, it works. I'm not saying that.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.